Hey everybody, it's Raider. Today we're going to talk about the ginger genocide, or the precursor to what I believe is going to be a ginger genocide. So for those people who don't know about, like in-depth history, back in Germany, before, yeah, we're going there. Back in Germany, the Nazis, before they started exterminating Jews, one of my uncles, my great uncle, who was like a ground pounder infantry kind of guy, he fought from, I believe he was at the landing of D-Day, one of the later landings, and he was in the heaviest fight against the Bulge. So, I mean, tough ass dude. He always mentioned, he always warned us when we were kids. He said, boys, always be careful of people who make lists and people who try to put people in put different types of people in different categories. He said because they want to separate everything out before they start killing everyone. He said this is what the Nazis did. And he often told us about how they would be in there, and he said we would raid areas where they would have officers. He stayed after the war and would catch Nazi officers trying to escape the country, he said, because they would take all the gas. And they would drive off. He said you would know who was a Nazi, but who was a Nazi officer, because they had gasoline at wherever they were staying at, and then they would hop in their car and try and drive out and think no one would know anything about it. And he said we would be looking over like, oh, there's an officer. They drive over in a Jeep, pull up there with a machine gun, point at him, and be like, all right, yeah, get out. We know you're an officer. You got nowhere to go, boy. we've got this figured out. You fell for our trap. And so basically, he said every so often you catch these guys, and they'd have papers on them. He said they always had a list that was given out by Hitler. And Hitler had this list of the races. And at the top would be Aryans, and at the very bottom were the Jews. And he said, if you read any of the Nazi propaganda, he said, because when you were in World War II, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing it if you understood any German. He said, we would learn some of the Nazi propaganda. And he said the Nazis believed that basically evolutionary standard. They believed the Aryans were at top, and all the other races were beneath them, and each one of them were evolutionary stages. And the Nazis believed that because the lower evolutionary groups had not died off yet, that they were being prevented from evolving further because they couldn't compete against each other and they couldn't evolve further. This was actually a teaching. It's scary stuff when you think about it. But one of the things that they believed, what they were planning on doing was, he always told us, he said it wasn't going to stop at the Jews. He said they were going to eliminate the Jews first. He said, and then next were the very darkest of blacks, then the next shade of black, and then the next shade lighter of black, and then the next shade lighter of black, and then they were going to get to all the brown-skinned people, and then it would be the darkest brown-skinned people, and the next lightest shade brown-skinned people, and they were just going to exterminate people by skin color shade as they moved up. And he said ultimately the purpose was to eliminate all these lesser races as they viewed them, so that they could eventually evolve and they could kickstart off the furthering of the Aryan evolution, basically. And they could go further on their evolution and be the supermen that they were destined to be. Or at least that's how they believed. I don't buy it. Most people shouldn't either. But how it all started was the Germans began to remove Jews from society. And what's kind of unnerving here is, if you look at this, you see a theme in which pop culture characters in comic books and TV and whatnot, and video games, are being replaced in the name of diversity. Now, mind you, the Germans did this in the name of racial equality as well. Of course, they didn't call it racial equality. They called it something else. They believed that the Jews had taken something from them, and they were simply taking it back. Same thing here, okay? If you ask any SJW, they'll tell you, oh, well, there was racism back in the day, and they pushed more white people than black people, and we're just taking stuff back. We're just taking back and giving people the characters that they really wanted. It's not what's happening. What's happening here is you're exterminating a group of people that are on the very lightest shade if you stop and think about it. The one thing that the left really hates are white people. Or at least the people they love to hate on are white people. And so, question, have you ever seen anyone lighter than a ginger? Okay? Gingers are a lot of times Irish. They are pasty white. Like there's a meme on the internet where it says, "Did you spot the other chick?" And you look at it's like a Florida beach, and you're looking, and then you see this bikini just sitting on the sand. Then you realize, oh no, that's not a bikini. That's an Irish chick trying to get a tan. She's like so white. She just blends in with the sand. You almost don't even see her. But in short, the left, they hate white people. And so what they're doing here is they've basically picked their Jews. This is as far as the racism that comes out of the snowflakes and the left, they've picked their Jews. In this case, it's the gingers. And what they want to do is they want to completely, in my opinion, ostracize the gingers from society so they can say, oh, these people, they don't exist anymore. And then eventually, fuck, my phone just tilted. Problems of doing YouTube videos on your phone. You have this, what they want to do is they want to take away the existence of a certain group of characters so that they can replace them with what they believe is the superior race. In this case, with SJWs, they worship the black race entirely. They worship anyone who's brown. They worship anyone that they believe is a minority. And it kind of is stupid because once they get done with the gingers, they're moving to blondes next. I mean, it's the next logical point. But really, it shows really just the hypocrisy of these people. Because if you were to take, I believe there was a point where this actually happened in reverse. A person who was a fan artist took a character from Pokemon, I believe a gym leader. It's been so long since I haven't played the new game. So they basically took a gym leader and lightened her skin. For some reason, I'm not sure why they did it. I don't know if it was intentional, because one of the things that can happen with doing different screens is your computer screen could have a different setting and it could make things look darker than what they are. And so when the person put it up there, I don't know if they thought it was actually dark enough, but then when it was on everybody else's monitors, it might have looked lighter, and the left lost their shit. And people were sitting back saying, now, wait a minute. You do the same thing now. I mean, Jimmy Olsen's black. Iris West is now black. Someone can't take a white character or a black character and lighten them up a bit. And it became kind of a meme because it was showing the hypocrisy. The fact is, you're not supposed to race swap back. You're not supposed to take a black character and race swap it, because to them this is sort of a sacrilege. It would be like claiming Hitler was a Jew to an SJW, I suppose, if you were going to say it in that aspect. And I'm using the analogy of them to the Jews to show just how, because they mirror it so well. I'm not saying there's going to be like an actual ginger genocide. I hope there's not going to be. I hope we're not going to see hot redhead chicks in concentration camps. Actually, if there's going to be hot redhead chicks in concentration camps, we may have to go save those chicks. They can pay us back later. We can get creative. But anyway, the point is, the actions that are taken by SJWs, a lot of times what amazes me is they take the most inhuman, crazy action that they can take, claim it's for good, and then once you put it through a tiny monicum of scrutiny, you realize, damn, they're acting like Nazis right now. Yeah, and so the thing is, it's kind of talentless hackery, because they try to make this point that one of the excuses is, there weren't a lot of black characters back then because, blacks didn't make up a good percentage of the population. There weren't that many of them like there are now. And also, black character, there weren't that many black characters back then. There's not a lot of them to use. mostly that's false, because if you look at many of these characters, like characters from The Flash, Jimmy Olsen, also Archie and G.I. Joe here, those were made. I don't think G.I. Joe was. But, I mean, you take at least the DC characters, many of them were made during the golden age, and of comic books, segregation was pretty big during that time, because, civil rights movement was going on then. At the time before the civil rights movement, blacks made up 20%, made up like almost a quarter of the country's demographic. About 24.5%, I believe. Nowadays, they make up less than, I think, like 17 or 16%. It's very low. The population has actually been dwarfed by the groups. It's actually, I think someone has said the population is actually reduced in the black communities. It's nuts. But that kind of proves that to be false, because if you're going by actual demographics, you should have less black actors playing roles in comic books than you had back then. Than you had characters back then. Let me see how to put this. Your demographic of characters should be more white than they now as actors than they should have been as characters back then, because you have less blacks in the demographic now than you had blacks back then. I'm not being racist. I'm just pointing out statistical facts to prove the hypocrisy here. The other one, like I said, where they say, there aren't very good black characters. Bullshit. Okay? Because you have Black Panther, you have Falcon. People do like Falcon. Okay? There is a group of people that do like Falcon. There are groups of people that like Black Panther. They have followings. They have fandoms. A recent movie that was done, Into the Spider-Verse, for instance, they pulled a black character out, and he was an interesting character. They did do a bit of swapping up with him to put Miles Morales, to kind of, segue Miles Morales in. But Prowler is originally a black character, and an interesting one at that. He's a villain who eventually becomes a good guy. He's sort of a redemption story, kind of like Vegeta almost, if you stop and think about it. He's kind of like Black Vegeta to Spider-Man's Goku. But there's another one. There was a black kid who's an inventor. His name escapes me. There's also Cardiac, and this is just in Spider-Man's little rogues gallery. This is just in Spider-Man's little gallery of guys. There's also a chick who was known as Bluebird. She was an athlete. Cardiac was a black guy that modified himself with cybernetics. And I sit here and say this, there's no way you couldn't make a good movie out of Cardiac, because Cardiac's main mode of transportation is a Fortnite glider. He Fortnite glides around the city, and he attacks Big Pharma because his sister died of an illness, and Big Pharma had. But basically, it's the story of Big Pharma has the drug that could cure something, but instead they don't release it because if more people die, the price of it will go up so they can make better profits. Well, he finds out about it. He gets this cybernetic upgrade, which is very painfully grafted to his muscular skeletal system. And he becomes this super villain. It's more like a super vigilante hero known as Cardiac. Cardiac could stun the crap out of you or put you into cardiac arrest. Hence his name is Cardiac. He uses a staff to fight. So you got this really good African vibe going with this character. And the costume was just amazing. It was very ahead of its time. It's just blue and white costume, which would pop really nicely on a TV screen. But you have all these, especially also from your boy Zach, you got Night Thrasher is also another one. So you've got a ton. You got Steel from the DC universe. There's all kinds of black superheroes that could be pulled out. MSN's just ignoring them because what the hell did I just do? Okay, MSN is ignoring them because they want to push this narrative of victimhood, but they don't want to show the strength that was in victimhood. I think there was a black rapper one time who said, "You can see roses in a flower garden, and they look pretty, but you can spot the really weak ones. You can spot the marred ones." He said, "But when you're walking down the sidewalk and you see a rose growing out of the concrete, and it's all bloomed up," he said, "it's no one looks at that rose and sees its scarred leaves and its broken petals. They don't see the creases in it. They just marvel at the beauty of its strength, its willingness to survive in a harsh environment." And you have these characters, a lot of them were made during the segregational period. A lot of them were made during a time when it was a bad thing to have. It was something that people would come after you for, to make a black character. I mean, the Klan would come after people who supported blacks, who wanted blacks to eat in the same room, who sat back. Store owners, I remember a lot. My dad was talking about how store owners would bitch and complain about the fact that if they put a storefront in, they had to put 4 fucking bathrooms in because Jim Crow law said you had to have 4 frickin' bathrooms. They said you should only have to have 2 bathrooms, man and woman, and that's it. It would cut half the costs out of putting a bathroom in your restaurant. It'd cut your restaurant down by half, because you wouldn't have to segregate the restaurant out and separate everything from everyone else, because it was mandated by law. You didn't have a choice in the matter. But you have these characters that are here despite the environment that they're in, and instead of celebrating the strength, and this is the thing that SJWs don't do, they don't celebrate strength, they celebrate weakness. They're ass backwards on everything that they do. They want people to be weak. "Oh, look at you. You're a victim. This poor woman has been raped." But you never hear SJWs talking about the chick that picks up a gun and shoots the guy that's trying to rape her. They don't praise her. "Oh, she shouldn't have a gun." Hey, you've got books like Ignited, which as soon as I get that, I'm going to be running that in. I got to look through. I got to set up an Amazon account for that nonsense. That's going to be a fun one. That's going to be a fun one. I may also do a review of. I have Jawbreakers. I'm going to review that. But anyway, back to the point. SJWs do things just ass backwards when it comes to things. They don't want to celebrate the strength of characters. You know, these characters that were pushed forward by creators like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, who created some of these characters. They want to push these characters to the forefront because they want to push a narrative of shame. I've often made this analogy on Twitter that SJWs are not like zombies or a disease. They're like the Borg. And their battle cry, you know how the Borg come in there like, lower your shields, resistance is futile, lower your shields, prepare to be assimilated, your culture will adapt to service ours. SJWs come in to an area, by the time you realize they're there, they're already multiplied. And they look at the fandom afterward, they control the hierarchy. They control where it's all coming from. They control what they believe is the fountain of creativity. And when they control what they think is the heart of the propaganda, not realizing the heart of what makes that great are the fans, they turn to the fans and they go, "We are the snowflakes. We are the SJWs. Lower your expectations and prepare to be shamed. Your geek culture will adapt to service our propaganda. Resistance is futile. Resistance is futile." And what they do is they go in, they want to push weakness to shame people. They want to make the excuses. It's like the excuse here. Well, you know, black characters weren't pushed. Bullshit. I named a ton of black characters off, and most of them were just in the Spider-Man universe. There are black characters. I mean, there were a shit ton of black characters back in the day that you could pick from. I'm pretty sure if you grabbed a Marvel encyclopedia and you grabbed a DC encyclopedia, you could find easily 30 or 40 characters that are black that if you put a decent damn writer on, could turn those characters into a massive fandom overnight, especially in this environment if you pushed it. But they don't want to do that because these characters were not invented now. Because what is the point of their wokeness? And it's kind of a point to they lose their power to shame you. I'll do a video on this a while back. They kind of use words like racism and misogyny almost like magic spells. And I'll do a video on this later. I was planning on doing it. But basically, they lose. What's the point of calling someone a racist and claiming that you're woke when you pull characters out of the past that were black, that are minority, that are created in a time when you had Jim Crow law? Well, suddenly you don't look as woke as you want to be. And then they lose a little bit of their pull and they lose a bit of their power. So they don't want to use these characters because characters like Steel, characters like Cardiac, characters like Prowler, they don't want to give them their own books. They don't want to push them as their own characters. They'll probably use them as a side character, but they won't push them in their own books, because when you push them in their own books, this shatters the narrative of the past was so racist that no one could do anything, and we're here to fix what the past had done. You realize then now that the past is starting to correct itself. And it takes away from that power that they have over an industry. It takes away their influence and authority. I'm starting to ramble a bit. So. But the thing is, ultimately, this is just lazy. I mean, if you look at the screen here, it's ultimately just lazy. They're picking the whitest of white characters, which are gingers, and they're trying to erase them from history on the guise of, look how woke we are. Look how great we are. We're going after the white devil, and we're going to change him up so you can finally love these characters. Forget the fact that they're already characters you probably already love. There's plenty of I think there's plenty of black people. If you listen to a lot of black people talk, there are plenty of black people who would get behind a character like Cardiac. There are plenty of black people who could get behind a character like Prowler. I mean, Prowler's a guy who was just doing what he had to do for money. He's just trying to survive. He's like a Compton superhero. he's like Ice Cube or something like that. You know, he's like the original rapper superhero. You know, you make him a rapper. Who, you know, he's down his luck. He keeps getting hammered by the police, so he becomes like, I think Prowler was like a mercenary. But I mean, you also got a guy like Prowler or like Cardiac who, you know, he's trying. You know, the man killed his sister. They just let her die, so he's going to get revenge for his sister. I mean, you tell me there's not a black man alive that wouldn't like that character. You know, going in and he don't even use guns, man. He goes in there, gives you a fucking heart attack, man. I'm as serious as a heart attack. Now you have a heart attack. I mean, you could write these characters awesome, and you could really push them. But they don't want them because these are characters of strength. These characters that they're changing, these characters they've changed to black, are symbols of weakness. And they use this to weaken society down so they can control them. Because there's actually a scene from one of the Alita mangas, I can't remember where it is, where she's protecting a train. And they get attacked, and the one guy who's really wormy, he's really weak looking dude, jumps in and stops Alita, and she gets, because he makes her hesitate for that second, she gets her legs cut off by a machine gun. And and the other guy that's there, he's like, why? I thought you were doing this for your family. And the guy goes, because freedom is for the strong. And the only thing weak people like me can look forward to for any type of peace is a dog collar. I'd rather wear a dog collar than try to be free. And that's why SJWs push this form of weakness. They push it because then they can be the strong ones and they can rule over the people that they make weak. And I'm going to end on that. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. It's wordy and long. These are just getting long. I don't know why. I've got to write my thoughts down and compress them a little bit better than this. But anyway, tell me what you think in the comments about it. Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm wrong? Critique, honest critique. That's what I like to have. Also, be sure to, if you like the video, thumbs up. Also, remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell if you haven't. I'm going to be releasing more videos. And I guess I'll do a Jawbreakers comic review either today. Not today. Today's Thursday. Probably Friday. Friday I'll do a Jawbreakers review. Because I got some things I'll say about that. Some cautionary tales with Jawbreakers. It's really good, but your boy Zach makes one tiny mistake in there that I've been wanting to critique. Some people have mentioned it, but they mention it in fleeting moment, and I want to just kind of critique it and explain how it could have been done better. But anyway, big fan of yours, Myers. Anyway, I am the Last Raider, rating comics and pop culture, doing what I want. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay frosty, and I'll see y'all next time.